Struggling to make your private practice more profitable? The Profit First Academy by Green Oak Accounting is designed just for therapists, helping you boost profits, pay yourself confidently, and take control of your finances.
Join today for just $54 a month at profitfirstfortherapists.com/academy.
Feeling overwhelmed as a leader or helping professional in these chaotic times? You're not alone. Finding clarity and mentorship can be the key to avoiding burnout and stepping into your role as a leader. Our very own Katie Vernoy is offering dedicated strategy sessions to help you navigate these challenges.
Visit evolvetothriveconsulting.com/modern therapist to learn more.
You're listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide, where therapists live, breathe, and practice as human beings. To support you as a whole person and a therapist, here are your hosts, Curt Widhalm and Katie Vernoy.
Welcome back, Modern Therapists. This is Modern Therapist Survival Guide. I'm Curt Widhalm with Katie Vernoy, and this is the podcast for therapists about things that we do in our practices, the things that we do in our lives, the things that we do in the mental health world. And this is a podcast that I'm just going to say is inspired by r/therapist subreddit, and in particular, a post from a couple of weeks ago by StemPsych. And the title of this post is All American Therapists Need to Be a Little Bit Social Workers Right Now. What we can do to protect access to healthcare in the U.S. And we will link to this in our show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. But in the spirit of our episode from a couple of weeks ago about not just enough to raise awareness, this is more of a follow-up as far as some of the call to action things that we can do and ways that as the changing healthcare world, the changing mental health care world continues to evolve under the Trump administration, with many of the things that have already changed by the time that we recorded this episode, and just due to our production time, all future changes that have happened since we've recorded and until you're listening to this. So this is really kind of some practical step kinds of things and some things that hopefully challenge you as our listeners to follow up on not just raising awareness.
I think that's a great idea. I think the big piece for me is how to do that without harming my own mental health. I put a post up in our Facebook group, Where Are People Getting News? And it's a very long post. I guess we could actually link to that in our show notes at mtsgpodcast.com too. And I think what I started to see was that people were trying to titrate down from doom scrolling and potentially find aggregators or more neutral information sources, people or organizations who are trying to come out with just the facts and kind of some more neutral observations. And I think that can be very helpful to get away from the drama and the clickbait titles and the outrage. At times, I think sometimes it's good to feel that too. But I think getting to a place where we're able to get just the information that we need so that we can be informed and help our clients. But I've been working really hard to try to step away from holding a lot of anxiety. I've been trying to step away from moving in all different directions, trying to sort through what is it can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I'm excited about this episode because I think it gives us a sense of what can we do when we have our therapist hat on, because it feels important right now to be able to support our clients effectively. And it also feels pretty daunting because of how much information is coming so quickly with, such an uproar around it. And so to me, I think being able to give a little bit of advice and some practical steps, I think I'm hoping will be helpful.
So this is a lengthy post by StemPsych. I'm going to drop some pieces of this throughout this episode. I'm not going to read it in its entirety. And this is obviously something that is addressed very much at our American audience here, but as much of the world watches us do whatever it is the hell that we're doing here over the next couple of years, this is some of the ways to return some of the locus of control of what's going on into us and our practices. So just starting with the top of this article, Someone recently posted here about Trump attacking the Affordable Care Act subsidies. That's, of course, just the beginning. Trump and the rest of the Republican Party has been very clear that they want the ACA gone. They want Medicaid minimized or eradicated. And if they thought they could get away with it, they'd get rid of Medicare as well. Trump will be going after healthcare access in several ways. Obviously, they will be attempting to directly dismantle programs legislatively and by executive order. But far fewer people know that one of the ways that Trumpists and those who preceded them attacked social programs in the past, including things like the ACA, was by doing things that make it hard for people who are qualified for things to find out what they are qualified for. End quote. So not only has the previous Trump administration, but other previous Republican administrations in the past tried to dismantle programs from the top down, they also take them from the bottom up. And as USEMPSYCH is saying here, they do that by limiting the available information. And at least as of the time of recording here, we've already seen several websites across a number of different departments go offline, be taken down, have restricted access to them. And I imagine by the time that this airs that we are also going to see several more of those things happen. I have already had a personal relationship of mine who works in a rural hospital in middle of America communicate to me as well that they've already had threats of federal funding if they release community health updates out into the community about diseases that could be spreading around. So this is very much already in place that information is being limited. It's where we come in.
That's what we hope to come in. I think this is something that we've been working on. We're reaching out to experts. We know experts in the world that can help us find some of this information, as well as share some perspectives from experts in some of these different areas that are under siege. Is that too dramatic to say? But we hope to be putting out some extra episodes about some of the topics that have been immediately taken away from the government websites, but also the things that we're all talking about. This is still very much in process, so I'll leave that there. But I think it's something that if you have a topic or an area of expertise or an area of concern that you want us to seek out an expert and get some more information onto our website, please reach out to us at podcast@therapyreimagined.com, and we can start adding more to our quote-unquote survival guide for everybody.
Back to you, STEMPSYCH. They do this by maneuvers like slashing outreach and program advertising budgets so people never find out about their programs, as already reinforced by my friend. Slashing the budget for customer service agents who answer the phone so wait times escalate, cutting the budget for maintaining websites. They also do things like narrow windows for opportunity, such as when Trump last time around reduced the number of days for open enrollment on health insurance exchanges, so more people who have qualified miss out on the opportunity. And I remember during the first Trump administration talking with students in a class that I was teaching at that time about there being one of the student loan processing companies where agents who were answering the phones had very strict amounts of time that calls could be answered and spoken through. And it was something ridiculous, like 4.5 minutes was the average amount of time. And some of the protocols that they would have to follow would be scripts that would take up 2.5 to 3 minutes. Here's background information. Please give me more information. What's your account number? And operating on very slow computer systems that would take up most of the call window time. So you have phone service agents who are under threat of being fired, having to meet their quotas, while also having to go through very burdensome steps on their end, making it a nearly impossible task to service people who actually need help.
Not only is that awful on a customer service basis, as well as actually doing their job, which is providing information, I would imagine those workers would be going through a lot of moral injury. Their job is to help give information to people, and they are being actively prohibited from doing it. So it seems like there would be a lot of frustration all the way around, and people would stop calling, which I think is the whole point. Private practice owners, do you feel like you're working hard but not seeing the profits you deserve? The Profit First Academy by Green Oak Accounting is here to change that. Designed exclusively for therapists, this program is built on the proven Profit First framework to help you take control of your finances and grow your business sustainably.
With step-by-step coaching, live Q&As with Profit First expert Julie Harris, and direct access to accountants who specialize in private practice, you'll get everything you need to build a profitable, thriving practice. And the best part? It's just $54 a month with no long-term commitment. Sign up today at profitfirstfortherapists.com/academy. So I have a private practice that is not insurance-based. I'm outside of a lot of these systems myself. And part of trying to take this article into spirit is looking at what are some of the ways that we can actually help to serve our communities. I'm not as directly impacted by things like waiting for Medicare reimbursements or serving Medicaid populations, which I know that a lot of our audience does work in agencies that are affected by that and have been affected by federal funding freezes and who knows what other hijinks have happened between recording time and you listening. But but this is really a space where all of us have to take more of a responsibility in being able to address some of the things that we had relied on the system just being able to be there and be comforting and be predictable and it not being a time of predictability. UStemPsych says if you really want to do things, you have to be able to get people information. And I know that this kind of goes a little bit against the spirit of what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago as far as raising awareness, but this is actually have some action steps when you are raising awareness. This is where having some of your energy directed to, for example, if you are an insurance provider, knowing more about how your state's health insurance exchange works, how your state's Medicaid program works, anything that is state specific that you can communicate to your clients. Because if the difference is, hey, you've got 10 days to be able to get this done, make sure that you get this done. Otherwise, you're not going to have reimbursable services. Helps to be able to have those clients be able to take action steps on their own.
I think another point that just came to mind, having gone through some similar things when I was working in community mental health, this is the time when placing your anger in the right spot can be very helpful. I remember a time when funding sources completely changed. So this was a little bit different, but has some similarities that I think are relevant. And frontline staff, the therapists, the case managers, the coping skills specialists, those folks were very frustrated and angry about all the changes, while the supervisors and managers and directors, all the people all the way up to the top, were frantically working to try to find funding, to try to sort through what could be done, and were taking the brunt of the anger from the frontline workers. I think, yes, there is a differential power structure. There are potentially folks in high levels and agencies who are greedy and see therapists as cogs on the machine, all those things. And there are folks who are madly trying to work to save your jobs because of these funding freezes and different things. And so I think being able to place your anger in the right spot at the federal government level, if that's what's happening, or at the state level, whatever it is, versus at your supervisor or the manager above them who is stressing out right now, trying to sort through how you're going to get paid and keep your job. Obviously, I'm speaking to the therapist there, but also for supervisors and managers, this is stressful for everyone. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and that you're not getting angry at therapists for not understanding what's going on. Because this is where the divisiveness can happen, where we start getting mad at each other versus trying to collaborate and get creative on how do we work with what is and not blame each other for what is, because it's not our fault. We're doing what we can to help the clients and communities we serve.
And speaking to agency kinds of situations or group practices, one of the words I think you're going to hear us talk about a lot is capacity. And whether this is individual, whether this is in agencies or in group practices, part of being able to address some of the capacity is make the space for this to happen, because it's going to happen anyway. my practice, we met last week as an entire team. We talked about, hey, this is the changing course of mental health care right now. There are people in our communities who are going to be affected by this, some of whom may be served by our practice, some of whom may be served elsewhere. But let's create some space to talk about our own feelings about this and our feelings about the system. So that way we can all be on the same page about this rather than it just continuing to potentially bubble under the surface. I think being able to have some directed space around this helps to not just make it feel like each one of us are cogs in an entire system, but that we are cogs that work together as part of the system. And I think that extending some of this capacity talk is you don't have to do everything for your clients that we're suggesting here, but even being able to help source and provide more resources to other places that are doing the stuff, if that's an extra step that you can take. Hey, adding a space on our website for here's referrals to immigration attorneys. So that way clients who know that they might be potentially running into immigration and customs enforcement, that they've got resources that they can turn to, that you are a place of trusted information amongst all of these changes rather than listening to whatever biased news source just happens to be the most available.
I think that it's important to acknowledge here that standing up and putting out information or taking stands can feel dangerous and may not be available to everyone. I think for me, there's some things that I'll probably end up putting on my website. And I think there are also conversations that I can have in the confidential private space with clients that can also be impactful without the information needing to be in public spaces. And I think for some clinicians, especially, there's their own oppression, marginalization, targeting that they may want to pay attention to when they think about how they can take action. And so I think it's an assessment that each of us needs to make. What are our capacities to stand up, and where do we stand up, and what can we do? There's some posts going around. If I find one that's public, I can also link this in the show notes as well. But if we're thinking about our own individual actions as humans, I think that there's a lot of advice around how to speak to legislators, how to do those things. And before we got on, Kurt's like, we got to tell them, call, don't email your legislators, especially if you have a legislator that's in a position of power.
In the party of the position of power.
Then the party of power, whether in your state or in the federal government, to make some changes to follow up on things. But know that each of us can play a different role and still be doing something. And you don't need to do all the things. You can do the 5 or 6 calls a day, or you can do different things that are effective for your clients and for yourself. You have to look at your own capacity.
To expand on that point, that calling takes somebody's time in those offices. It takes a staffer's time. And many of the representatives that Katie and I have come across in our advocacy work over the years, they're not young people. They are people who tend to operate in ways that the systems have worked oftentimes before, which is largely to say that sending an email, putting an online form, that stuff gets deleted rather quickly. Making a phone call takes up somebody's time. And oftentimes what happens in those offices is the representative or the chief of staff or whoever it is will talk to the staffers that day and say, what are the things that people are calling about today? And they'll listen to about the first 2 or 3 things on the list. This is what's important enough for people to call in. You can be one of those people. And
And it's about numbers too. It doesn't have to be some eloquent thing that you're saying. It's about, this is of concern for me. This is the position I want my legislator to take.
And you should be calling both the DC offices as well as the local offices for both of your senators and your congressional representative, at least as far as a federal level goes, as well as calling the state office and the local office for your local legislators. So this could be up to 12 calls a day. You might not have the capacity to do that, but especially as you're hearing clients talk about having their issues be affected by some of the ongoing changes. If you can get some of your clients to also call these people, then maybe you're only able to make 4 calls a day. But if you get somebody else to also make 4 calls a day, you're doing better than 0 calls per day. And even just being able to provide some information on your website, your social media, your waiting room. Hey, here's how to contact your legislators in order to be able to affect the programs that are affecting you. This is empowering people with the knowledge to take action themselves. And that is being able to help your clients, not just in their own individual world, but also become advocates for themselves.
I like putting caveats on what you're saying. So I'm going to go to a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And we've talked about this other places. So those episodes will be linked over in the show notes too. But some clients will need that information, will want that information. How can I advocate? What can I do? They'll be bringing in the topic of the news cycle, and that will be what you're talking about. And some clients won't. Some clients will also hold different political perspectives from you. And so this is just do good therapy, but it's sorting through who wants to talk about their own personal crises, who wants to talk about what's going on in the news. And sometimes you have to introduce that as a potential topic because they don't know that you're open and a safe space to talk about politics with. And how do you take care of clients without either pushing them to feel like they need to advocate or being part of the therapy is an opiate for the masses, and how do you cope and calm down and kind of dim their fire? This is a way longer conversation than just this right now. But as therapists, we do have a lot of impact, especially for clients we're seeing at least once a week. We're part of their mood regulation system in some ways. And so being able to work with them to understand their goals on how they take care of themselves during these uncertain times, I think is really important. And also making sure that you're not pushing your own quote unquote agenda, or that they feel that you're pushing your agenda, even if you're just trying to open a conversation they don't normally have. So way longer conversation is needed on that, I'm assuming. And I think we've done that a few different times. So I will try to find those and put those in the show notes. But as a clinician, your responsibility isn't to activate your clients, but if they are feeling hopeless, that can be a coping strategy, and having the tools to help them be an advocate can be very helpful too.
It's really about being able to help return some locus of control to people who feel that the world is devolving around them. And I think that there's a difference in our ethics codes between imposing our values on people and providing information on here's how to contact your legislators and what they actually listen to.
Mhm. Are you exhausted and overwhelmed by the constant change and chaos? You're not alone. When the world feels like it's crashing down, people look to therapists and leaders for support. But who's supporting you? The pressure can be isolating, and without the right guidance, burnout is just around the corner.
That's where Katie Vernoy comes in. With years of experience mentoring leaders and helping professionals, she's offering dedicated strategy sessions to help you find clarity, confidence, and a clear path forward. Whether you're struggling with burnout, career decisions, crisis management, or even navigating the ever-changing landscape of mental health care, Katie will help you create a plan that works for you.
Don't go through this alone. Visit evolvetothriveconsulting.com/modern therapist to learn more.
I saw something recently, and if I can pull it up again, we'll put it in the show notes. Otherwise, you just anecdotally have to trust what I came across. But it said that Republican callers tend to outnumber Democratic callers by about 8 to 1. And if that is something that helps to maybe activate and encourage people a little bit more, rather than posting something on a congressional member's Facebook page. I've looked at a handful of congressional Facebook page announcements over the time that we've worked in advocacies, the last, 12, 15 years or so. And I don't think that I've really seen a whole lot of people who are in agreement with the policies that some of these people are espousing, really posting and commenting. It's usually people who are diametrically opposite who are posting there. So I can see that that is largely ignored. But once again, my call is provide people with information on how to actively do this. So that way, some of this locus of control, being able to use our knowledge about how these systems work, ends up being able to take action. When I used to teach a policy and advocacy class, one of my assignments was call your congressional rep and ask them to take a stance on something. That was the assignment, and write about it. And it was probably one of the most procrastinated assignments that I've had in any of the classes that I've had, but resoundingly, most of my students found that was actually pretty easy. They actually took some time to listen to me. They took down some information, and in some cases, they got follow-up calls weeks or months later that said, "Hey, your representative has signed on to the legislation. Thank you for bringing that to our attention." So this stuff does work, but I think it's sometimes where, amongst all of the anxieties that we can have, normalizing that, hey, this is something that we can do. You don't have to agree with me, but if you are having concerns about your life and the way that this stuff happens, I can listen to you and I can validate your feelings and I can help you work with things. But part of taking the behavioral action on this stuff is let's actually do this. In fact, what if we try right now in session? Exposure.
Exposure. Yeah, I think a lot of folks don't like making phone calls. So I understand the procrastination. And I think if somebody feels strongly and has the words to say, the things to bring up, it can be hugely empowering and potentially very effective to be able to support clients in regaining some sense of control, some locus of control.
There is a part in here that I do really like about what Ustemsike wrote. Quote, maybe the best part about it from our therapist viewpoint is that it role models the idea that we take care of us. It is another form of caring and looking out for our neighbors that we are demonstrating. Doing this, we are role modeling compassion in action. We're demonstrating that one of the ways to help people is sharing good, accurate, factual information. We answer the question, how can one respond to such an attack on the social fabric of our country with by looking out for one another and reweaving it? We have to take action. It might be something that you're used to relying on federal stuff, act locally. Make sure that you're looking out for the people in your community, provide information, and you might run into people who do have different political viewpoints than you. And you, in your education, your position of privilege of knowledge about how some of these systems work, can use that privilege to benefit all people, whether it's people who are taking advantage of programs, whether they support the party that funded those programs in the first place or not. But one of the things that we've seen already under the Trump administration is many people who have voted for Trump who are immediately regretting it. And while there might be some personal satisfaction in taking some joy in seeing, oh, right, you're getting your just desserts. This is what you voted for. That's not helpful from our professional positions. What is helpful is if you want things to change, there are action steps that you have to take in order to do this. In order for us to really be the trusted members of our community, it's serving all people. And it's being able to do that in a way that is understanding that not everybody is going to be verbally happy with what you're doing. But when we understand that addressing things like systemic poverty, systemic racism, that we can have some sort of influence on the larger systems in order to be able to change it. That's really what our call to action is right now.
Yes, and I want to go back to 2 points. One is understand your own capacity. There are therapists who are being threatened, their lives, their livelihoods, their way of being, their identities. And it can be hard to hold space for folks who voted differently than you, who are not regretting the vote that they had or are celebrating in the aftermath of this regime change. So I think being able to understand your capacity, to be able to understand how you can best take care of yourself and support clients and communities that you're able to support, I think that's important. People can be angry. I get it. I've got some anger too. I've got some of my own feelings. And I feel able in my relative privilege to be able to work with folks and talk with folks who voted differently than I did and who believe differently than I do. Not everyone has that capacity, and we recognize that. And we have a whole conversation about bias and discrimination. I think a couple of them actually. So we'll put those in the show notes. And so I think this is where you and I differ a little bit, Curt. I
Oh
understand as
yeah, I'm
therapists.
waiting my turn on this one.
I understand that there is a need for therapists in our professional roles to be able to support folks. And we're not in every single minute of our days in our professional roles. And we all have capacity issues that we need to pay attention to, and that potentially our capacities are less in this time of crisis for many folks. And I want to honor that and not say that they can't be therapists because they can't work with somebody who would seek to harm them.
And I want to challenge that all of the times that I've heard people use that reasoning to not take action might be why we're in the position that we're in. Yeah, how many times have we raised the flag on this very podcast about this is coming down the pike, this is information that's coming? And 6, 12, 18, 24 months later, larger community is, oh, somebody should have done something. And I'm saying that right now is a time where, sure, you don't need to drop everything that you do, but spend 15 minutes a day making a couple of phone calls. Do a little bit more than what you have been doing. The resistance isn't going to be, during the revolution. The resistance starts with being able to do good community work. And if it takes even just a little bit more right now, do a little bit more. But I think it's so easy in our places of privilege to say that's not affecting me yet, that we don't do anything until it's too late. This is a time where, hey, we really actually do need to do some things, because when the system, a system that you and I have advocated, yes, definitely needs a lot of changes. We've done this for years. I've wanted to throw out entire parts of the system before, not like this. And I think that this is something where doing more than what you normally do doesn't have to be in great lengths. Yes, I respect people have capacities, but stop pearl clutching. Start saying somebody should do something and be the somebody who's starting to do something.
And I don't think we were in disagreement with that. I think potentially the point I made earlier wasn't clear. I'm saying if you feel harmed by someone, you don't need to be their therapist, and find the way to get to the capacity to do the things that are going to be effective. So it was a yes and, Curt. It wasn't saying don't do anything if you can't. It's saying understand your capacity and design it to do things that are effective. Does that work better?
Take action, people.
All right. All right.
We will have our show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. Follow us on our social media. Katie and I are going to try to be doing some stuff in our MTSG Therapy Reimagined universe that helps to be able to convey some of this stuff and be able to provide some more information. I'm starting to put some of that stuff in place in my practice to be able to serve my community. And we would love for you to join our Facebook group, the Modern Therapist Group, to continue on conversations like this. And until next time, I'm Curt Widhalm with Katie Vernoy.
Want to make your private practice more profitable? Join the Profit First Academy for just $54 a month and start taking control of your finances today. Visit profitfirstfortherapists.com/academy to sign up.
Need guidance in these challenging times? Katie Vernoy is offering special strategy sessions to help you navigate your career. Don't go it alone. Get the support you need. Learn more at evolvetotthriveconsulting.com/modern therapist.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide. Learn more about who we are and what we do at mtsgpodcast.com. You can also join us on Facebook and Twitter. And please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes.